Why was she the only one not shivering? The wind screamed across the high ridges of the Rockies, clawing through every layer of Arctic-grade fabric. Ice crystals burned the skin. Even through the howling gusts, the metallic creak of rifle bolts echoed like distant bells of war. 24 of the world's finest marksmen stood in formation, each one representing the pride of a nation. Only one of them was a woman. Captain Erin Blake, U.S. Army, 35 years old. Her boots crunched softly against the snow as she stepped onto the firing tarmac. No swagger, no theatrics, just the quiet confidence of someone who'd been underestimated her entire career. They called it the International Long-Range Precision Tournament. To the outside world, it was a friendly competition among allies. To those who stood here, it was far more brutal, a silent battlefield of reputation and honor, where one wrong calculation could erase a lifetime of discipline. Erin's breath fogged in the frigid air as she surveyed the setup, three steel silhouettes standing over 3.2 kilometers away, so distant they were nearly invisible to the naked eye. Each shooter would have 3 bullets, no scope adjustments between shots, wind chill -15, gusts 40 miles per hour, visibility collapsing. Perfect conditions for humiliation. "Gentlemen," the tournament officer called out, his voice breaking against the storm, "welcome to Frost Ridge Military Range. Today's weather will test not only your aim but your endurance. Remember, the mountain does not forgive mistakes." Murmurs followed, half amusement, half dread. One British sniper chuckled under his breath. The Australian beside him whispered, "No one's hitting 3 today. Not a chance in hell." Erin didn't look their way. She just laid her rifle case on the snow-dusted table and unclasped the latches with steady hands. The weapon inside gleamed, a Barrett MRAD.338 Norma Magnum modified for cold weather operations. Her hands moved with precision born of obsession. Bolt check, barrel clearance, custom suppressor alignment, cartridge integrity. Every motion calm, every breath measured. "Too cold for you, Blake." The familiar voice came from behind her, Sergeant Reeves, her longtime instructor and the closest thing she had to a friend. "Cold's just another variable," she said softly, eyes still fixed on her weapon. "You solve it like any other." He gave a small grin. "They're all watching you, you know." "I know." Across the prep area, a group of British marksmen gathered near their gear, their laughter sharp and dismissive. Major William Harrow, their leader, was a decorated veteran, proud, weathered, and quietly insulted that a woman had been invited to stand among them. He stepped forward, voice raised just enough for others to hear. "The famous Captain Blake," he said with a wry smile. "They say you embarrassed an entire SEAL team once, 8 men, 1 bullet." Erin didn't respond. "Probably a myth," one of his men muttered. Harrow's grin lingered. "This temperature will freeze her finger before she can even aim." Only then did Erin look up. "Maybe my finger," she said, her tone flat, calm, the kind of calm that made other soldiers nervous. "But not my aim." The air around them seemed to still. Even the wind hesitated. Harrow's smirk faded just slightly before he turned away, pretending to check his scope. But Reeves saw it, that flicker of uncertainty, that primal recognition among predators who have just met one stronger than themselves. The loudspeaker crackled again. "First round begins in 30 minutes. Weather's deteriorating faster than expected. Prepare accordingly." Erin checked her watch, her rhythm, her pulse, her breathing all steady. Around her, the world seemed frantic. Soldiers checking gear, recalibrating scopes, muttering calculations to spotters. She ignored them all. There was a rhythm to chaos. She learned to hear it years ago in the deserts of Afghanistan, the jungles of South America, and the frozen valleys of Norway. The wind spoke if you knew how to listen. A memory flashed, Commander Reynolds's face 3 months earlier, disbelieving as her single shot ended an entire Navy SEAL exercise before it began. Luck, he'd said. She smiled faintly now. Luck is for those who can't explain what just happened. The announcement cut through her thoughts. Weather front approaching from the northwest. Expect reduced visibility and increased gust patterns. Category 4 conditions possible within the hour. Someone whistled low. Category 4, they're mad. We won't even see the target. Erin kept working. Each round of ammunition was hand-loaded, its casing etched with micro-measurements she'd made herself. She inspected every bullet under the weak morning light, gloved hands steady. When Reeves brought her a cup of black coffee, she accepted it without a word. "You know they're waiting for you to fail," he said quietly. "They'll be waiting a long time." "The colder it gets, the more predictable it becomes," she replied. "They'll fight the cold, I'll use it." He frowned. "You actually want the storm to get worse." Erin glanced toward the horizon. A wall of white was building there, the kind of blizzard that swallowed sound. "The greater the challenge," she said softly, "the fewer the competitors." And in that moment, Reeves finally understood why her name had become legend whispered across bases. She didn't chase comfort. She hunted difficulty, because only there could she prove she existed. 15 minutes to go. The Australians were first on the firing line. One by one, the world's elite took their turns against the mountain. The results were brutal: misses, near misses, occasional cheers when a target was struck once out of 3. None dared hope for perfection. Erin watched them all through the spotting scope, her expression unreadable. She wasn't studying their hits, she was studying their failures. The way their bullets curved, the rhythm of the wind across the ridge, the timing between gusts. Data disguised as defeat. "They're all missing in the same direction," Reeves noted beside her. "They're shooting where the target is supposed to be," she murmured, "not where it actually is." He blinked, "But the targets are stationary." "The mountain is." She pointed with her gloved finger. "There's a micro-vortex in that valley, the snow's bending the light. The targets look like they're a few inches higher than they are." He stared at her, realizing that what separated her from everyone else wasn't just skill, it was perception. She didn't see the world as fixed. She saw it as a living equation, constantly shifting, waiting for someone brave enough to solve it. The British team took their turn next. Major Harrow's face was a mask of focus as he lay prone behind his rifle. He hit the first 2 targets with impressive precision. The third, a clean miss, 8 inches low. The best of Britain had failed where perfection demanded more than talent. He stood jaw tight. "Impossible," someone muttered behind him. Erin rose from her chair. Her turn. The storm was now in full command of the mountain. Visibility, less than 50 yards. Snow swirled like smoke. Most competitors had retreated to the shelter to watch from behind frosted windows. Erin walked calmly through the chaos, her white camouflage blending almost perfectly with the blizzard. No gloves. No hesitation. "She'll lose her fingers," a Canadian whispered. Reeves only shook his head. "Watch her." Erin lay flat on the mat, closed her eyes and listened. Not to the crowd, not to the wind itself. To the space between the gusts, the invisible rhythm that few even realized existed. Then she began to work. Every adjustment on her rifle was deliberate. No wasted motion, no second guesses. She placed her cheek against the frozen stock, exhaled once and let her heartbeat slow, 50, 48, 45 beats per minute. The rest of the world faded. "I'm not aiming at what I can see," she whispered to her spotter. "I'm aiming at what I know is there." The storm roared. She waited. 5 seconds, 10. Then silence, the kind of silence that happens right before history rewrites itself. Her finger tightened. The first shot cracked like thunder swallowed by snow. Then a second. Then a third. 3 bullets in less than 4 seconds. No one breathed. The radio crackled, the observer's voice uncertain. Target 1 confirmed hit. A stunned murmur rippled through the spectators. Target 2, he paused again, rechecking his instruments. Confirmed hit. Now even Harrow leaned forward. Target 3, another long silence. Then center mass, confirmed hit. For several seconds, the range was completely still. No celebration, no noise, just the quiet realization that something impossible had just happened. Erin exhaled softly and began dismantling her rifle. Her movements were as calm as before, as if she'd merely completed another training drill. Harrow approached slowly, eyes narrowed off fighting pride. "How?" he whispered. She looked up, her breath a small cloud in the cold air. "Cold," she said softly, "is just another kind of noise. Learn to hear through it and you can shoot through anything." That night, as the snow finally stopped, Erin sat alone in the mess hall, recording wind patterns and data in a small weatherproof notebook. Around her, other competitors whispered, still unable to explain what they'd seen. Her hands were raw from frost exposure, but steady as ever. Somewhere deep inside, beneath the discipline and calculation, she felt something rare, not pride, not victory, but relief. For the first time in years, she hadn't been underestimated. She'd simply been seen. And far away, in a secure office lined with classified files, General Winters set down his pen and murmured to an aide. "Find her, she's the one we've been waiting for." Why did silence feel heavier than applause? The storm outside had died, but inside Frost Ridge's mess hall it lingered, a quiet, invisible tension. Steam rose from mugs of black coffee, boots creaked against the metal floor. And everywhere she went, Captain Erin Blake felt their eyes. She sat alone at a corner table, her rifle case beside her, a half-empty cup cooling by her notebook. On the page, a string of equations, wind drift, temperature coefficients, bullet drop. But she wasn't writing about the shot she'd made. She was writing about what she felt when she pulled the trigger, the stillness, the clarity, the way the world seemed to pause and wait for her decision. The shot had made history, but it had also made her visible, and that was dangerous. Across the room, Major Harrow stood by the window, hands wrapped around a glass of whiskey. He'd been a professional long enough to understand what he'd witnessed. "That wasn't shooting," he murmured. "That was control of reality." "More like luck," someone muttered nearby. Harrow shook his head slowly. "No, you can't luck your way through physics." He turned, watching Erin write, her posture quiet and distant. The others avoided her gaze, afraid of what they didn't understand. That's when Sergeant Reeves sat down across from her, setting a tray between them. "Figured you'd forget to eat," he said softly. "You always do after you break a record." Erin glanced at the tray, coffee, bread, and nothing else. Simple, practical, she smiled faintly. "You know me too well." "I've been your instructor for 7 years," he said. "Too long not to." She didn't look up. "They still don't believe it." "They will," Reeves said, "in time." "I don't care if they believe it," Erin replied, closing her notebook. "I care that they'll start asking how, and that's when things get complicated." Reeves frowned. "You think they'll try to use it?" "Of course. Every military mind wants the same thing, control over uncertainty, and I just showed them it's possible." Reeves leaned closer. "Then maybe it's time to decide who gets to learn that secret." Erin looked past him, toward the observation window. Beyond it, the mountain was turning blue in the fading light. "Secrets don't stay owned," she said. "They just change hands." Later that night, as the hall emptied, she remained alone, the last cup of coffee gone cold beside her. The wind outside howled again, faint but familiar, like an old friend calling from the dark. Then the door opened. The man who entered didn't belong to the tournament. His uniform was immaculate, his presence commanding. A general's insignia gleamed under the dim lights. "Captain Blake," he said, his voice deep, deliberate. "A word outside, please." Erin stood immediately. Reeves, who was just leaving, froze. "General Winters," he muttered under his breath. Winters. The name carried weight across every branch. A man whispered about for operations that never made it into reports. Erin followed him out into the corridor. The air was colder here, quieter. Outside the window, the sky glowed faintly with the reflection of floodlights against snow. "You made quite an impression today," Winters said. "Just did my job, sir." He smiled slightly. "That's what they all say right before their careers disappear into the black." Erin tilted her head. "Is that a threat, sir?" "No," Winters said calmly. "An invitation." He reached into his coat and handed her a sealed envelope. Thick paper. No insignia except for a small embossed symbol in one corner, the letter G crossed by a sniper's reticle. "Inside is a briefing," he said. "You won't understand most of it yet. You're not supposed to. But if you say yes, your clearance will change. Your life will change." Erin studied the seal. "What's the name of the program?" "Ghost Protocol." She said nothing, waiting. "It's real," Winters continued. "Joint operations across multiple branches, international components, missions that don't exist on any record." His gaze sharpened. "After what you did today, you're on their shortlist." "Why me?" "Because you did what physics said was impossible," Winters said. "And because you've already proven you can think beyond doctrine." He leaned closer. "You've done this before, haven't you? That SEAL team exercise, the 8 men, 1 shot." Erin didn't answer, but her eyes did. "Commander Reynolds is with us now," Winters said, watching her carefully. "He specifically requested you." That name hit harder than the wind. For a brief moment her composure cracked. "Reynolds." 24 hours, Winters said simply. "You'll know where to go." He turned, footsteps echoing down the hall, each one measured, final. Erin stood alone, the envelope cold in her hand. The embossed G seemed to shimmer under the corridor lights like a brand. Back inside, the competitors were pretending not to watch her. They'd seen Winters arrive, seen the envelope. Now, the quiet respect they'd given her turned to something else, unease. She returned to her table, set the envelope down, and resumed writing in her notebook. Not data this time, just a single line. "The mountain doesn't care who wins. It only remembers who didn't break." Across from her, Harrow approached again. He didn't ask permission to sit. "Ghost Protocol," he said softly. "That's what they called it, isn't it?" Erin looked up. Her face betrayed nothing. "I have no idea what you're talking about." But her hand rested over the envelope. Harrow studied her for a long moment. "You know what the difference is between soldiers and ghosts, Captain?" Erin waited. "Soldiers come home." He stood and walked away, leaving the words behind like a curse she didn't know if she'd already accepted. The next morning, the world pretended to move on. The award ceremony filled Frost Ridge's grand hall with uniforms, cameras, and forced smiles. Erin stood in formation among the American contingent, expression calm, posture perfect, as the announcer read out results. In first place, with a record-breaking performance under Category 4 conditions, Captain Erin Blake, United States Army. Polite applause, professional nods, no cheers. Respect in the military was rarely loud. The medal's weight around her neck felt like irony, cold metal, warmer eyes watching. After the ceremony, the hall became a blur of clinking glasses and shallow congratulations. She shook hands she didn't remember, smiled at faces she didn't trust. When Harrow approached with 2 glasses of scotch, she almost laughed. "Proper whiskey," he said. "Seems right, considering the conditions you beat us in." She took the glass. "You make it sound like we were at war." "Weren't we?" They clinked glasses. The amber liquid burned her throat in a way she almost welcomed. "I've been in this game for 2 decades, Harrow said. Written field manuals, Trained men who went on to kill in 3 wars, but you, he shook his head. You didn't just beat us, you rewrote the conditions of the fight. Erin's eyes softened. Maybe the manuals need rewriting. He smiled faintly. Maybe they do. But before he could say more, another voice cut in. Every word they say about her, it's true. The voice came from behind her, deep, familiar, impossible to forget. She turned. Commander Jack Reynolds. No uniform this time, just a dark coat, civilian clothes, but the posture of a man who'd never stopped being a soldier. Reynolds, she said quietly, didn't expect you here. Wouldn't miss it, he said. Wanted to see the legend for myself. Harrow looked between them, sensing history. So the rumors. All true, Reynolds said evenly, and then some. Erin studied him, still sore about the training exercise. He smiled, but his eyes didn't. You caught us off guard once, won't happen again. Hope not, she said. That would make it boring. There was silence between them, not anger, not rivalry anymore, something heavier, recognition. Harrow excused himself, leaving them alone. You're not here for a medal ceremony, Erin said. You're here because of Winters. Reynolds didn't deny it. They want you in, Erin, they need you. And trust me, this program is unlike anything you've seen. She stared into her glass. The ice cracked softly. And if I say no? He studied her for a long moment. Then the world keeps moving, and someone else takes the shot you were born to take. That night, Erin stood outside her quarters, the snow crunching softly under her boots. The mountains stretched endless and silent before her. She looked at the envelope again, the one marked only with that ghostly insignia. For years, she'd fought to prove she belonged, in units that didn't want her, among men who thought her success was luck. Now, she was being invited somewhere that didn't care about gender, only results. But at what cost? She remembered Harrow's words, soldiers come home. And she wasn't sure she ever really had. Erin tore open the envelope. Inside, no orders, no map, just coordinates, and a single handwritten line. Avalanche Station. Report within 24 hours. Bring nothing but your weapon. She closed her eyes, exhaled once. Then she smiled, that same quiet, defiant smile she'd worn before the 3,200-meter shot. The greater the challenge, she whispered to the mountain, the fewer the competitors. And somewhere, in a command room hundreds of miles away, General Winters turned to his aide and said, "She just said yes." What kind of place had no coordinates on a map? The helicopter cut through the night like a whisper blade slicing thin air over snowfields that stretched forever. The world below was a frozen wilderness, a landscape erased by silence. Inside the cabin, Captain Erin Blake sat motionless, her rifle case between her knees, her eyes on nothing. The pilot hadn't spoken in an hour, neither had she. There was nothing to say. Orders had been simple: Avalanche Station, 400 hours, bring your weapon, tell no one. Now the horizon glowed faintly, not dawn, but light reflecting off ice and cloud. The mountains loomed higher, darker, sharper. They didn't seem to end. Then a voice crackled through her headset, calm, controlled, familiar. "Commander Reynolds." "Welcome back to the game, Captain." Erin's eyes flicked toward the cockpit. "Didn't realize you'd be flying, sir." "I'm not," Reynolds said. "I'm waiting for you at the station." "Good," she said softly. "I still owe you a rematch." He chuckled once, then his tone dropped. "You're about to see something most soldiers don't even know exists. You can still walk away." Erin's reply was quiet, deliberate. "I don't walk away from precision." There was a pause on the line, one that said he believed her. Outside, the mountains opened into a massive, glacial valley. The helicopter descended through a break in the clouds, revealing a facility carved directly into the rock face, angular, almost invisible against the ice. No visible insignia. No beacon lights except the faintest red glow marking the landing pad. "Home sweet home," the pilot muttered. Erin didn't answer. The landing was smooth. As the rotors slowed, a group approached, 5 figures in unmarked tactical gear, faces half obscured by frost masks. One stepped forward and saluted sharply. "Captain Blake, welcome to Avalanche Station." She nodded once. The voice belonged to a woman, calm, professional, and unmistakably used to command. "I'm Dr. Elise Chambers," she said, removing her mask. "Behavioral analysis, team integration." The smile that followed was professional but not warm. "You've caused quite a stir." "Not my intention," Erin said. "It never is," Chambers replied. "Follow me." They moved inside through a series of reinforced blast doors. Each required 2 forms of authentication: biometric scan and voice recognition. The deeper they went, the more surreal it felt. The hum of servers, the low thrum of generators, the sterile scent of ozone and cold metal. Cameras tracked their every step, yet not a single marking indicated which branch this place belonged to. Erin noticed everything: the subtle curve of the hallway walls to reduce acoustic resonance, the way every corridor turned at irregular angles to break line of sight. Whoever built this place had designed it to disappear. "This is Ghost Protocol," Erin asked quietly. Chambers smiled faintly. "Part of it." They entered a wide operations room, walls lined with monitors, holographic displays projecting terrain models and mission data. A few personnel looked up briefly, their eyes assessing her the way predators assess another predator. Chambers gestured toward the center table. "Captain Blake, meet Ghost Team Actual." 4 figures turned from their stations. Marcus Webb leaned, scarred, his movements precise and measured. Former CIA infiltration specialist. Dr. Samantha Reyes, sharp-eyed cyber intelligence expert, the kind who could break encryption faster than most people typed passwords. Derek Kovach, built like an avalanche himself, former combat engineer, his hands scarred from a lifetime of demolition work. And Alexis Chen, smaller, quieter, but with eyes that could read intent faster than words. Reynolds entered behind them, his presence filling the room like gravity. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, "this is Captain Erin Blake, the sniper from Frost Ridge." Webb raised an eyebrow, "The one who hit 3 for 3 in a blizzard." Kovach snorted. "Under those conditions, that's physics denial, not shooting." Erin's voice was calm. "Physics doesn't care about belief, only application." Ray smirked. "She's one of us then." Reynolds stepped forward, handing her a tablet. "That," he said, "is why you're here." Erin studied the screen. Satellite images, a mountain range, a single structure outlined in red, coordinates Eastern Europe, remote, inhospitable. "Target?" she asked. "Name's Alexander Volkov," Reynolds said. "Former Russian biochemist. Defected 5 years ago, disappeared with classified research. Reemerged under the protection of an organization called Black Circle." Erin's jaw tightened. She knew the name. Everyone in the intelligence community did. Black Circle wasn't an army, it was a syndicate. A black market empire dealing in weapons that didn't officially exist. "What's he working on?" she asked. Reyes tapped the holographic table, projecting data across the room. "Next-generation biochemical agents. Volkov's team developed a compound that can rewrite genetic expression in days. If it's weaponized, we're looking at extinction-level contagion potential." Erin's gaze didn't flinch. "And you want me to kill him?" "Not just him," Reynolds said. "We need his research intact. The files, the samples, the formula. Destroying the compound risks global contamination. We need precision." Erin looked at the coordinates again. "Range." 3.2 kilometers from the ridge to the target window, Reyes replied. "Wind shear unpredictable, thermal distortion. structural barriers between firing position and objective. In other words, Kovac said, impossible. Erin's lips twitched, almost a smile. I've heard that before. Winters entered the room then, no announcement, no ceremony. Just quiet authority that silenced everyone. Captain Blake, he said, glad to see your reputation wasn't exaggerated. Never is, sir. He gestured to the holographic projection. This operation is designated Long Shadow. You'll have 2 weeks to prepare. The parameters are fluid, but failure is. Erin studied the mountain profile, tracing angles and elevations with her eyes. Who designed this firing solution? Reyes raised a hand. We all contributed, it's a shared model. Erin shook her head. It's wrong. The room went still. Explain, Winters said. She zoomed in on the terrain. Your predicted wind patterns assume static flow through the valley, but these ridgelines create interference. The gusts will oscillate. The bullet will spiral if uncorrected. Kovac frowned. We ran the data through a simulation. Simulations don't account for mountain personality, Erin said simply. Every range breathes differently. The phrase hung in the air, strange, poetic, unsettlingly true. Winters gave a single approving nod, then corrected. Erin turned to Kovac. I'll need custom rounds, modified ballistic coefficients, adjusted core density, micro-tapered jackets. How precise? He asked. Micrometers. He exhaled. That's extreme, but I can build it. Good, Erin said, because I don't miss. Hours passed. The team dispersed to their respective duties. Only Reynolds and Erin remained in the observation room, watching the snow fall outside the reinforced window. You know, he said, when I first met you, I thought you were reckless. I was, she replied. What changed? Erin's eyes stayed on the snow. Reckless people die fast. I learned to slow down until the world moves at my pace. Reynolds nodded slowly. They called me in to evaluate you after the SEAL incident. You embarrassed my best operators. You designed that exercise, she said. You placed your team in the open convergence zone. How could you know that? I didn't, I calculated it. He studied her, the quiet weight of admiration settling between them. Do you ever doubt yourself, Blake? All the time, she said softly, but doubt keeps the shot honest. At 200 hours, she couldn't sleep. The bunk room was silent, the air recycled, too clean to feel real. She got up, dressed, and wandered down to the shooting range built deep within the mountain. Rows of targets extended into darkness, the air sharp with gun oil and ozone. She set up her rifle, chambered one of the new rounds Kovac had machined earlier that day, and fired. The bullet hit dead center. The echo rolled through the tunnels like thunder in a church. She lowered the rifle slowly, whispering to herself. Still breathing, still here. Behind her, a voice spoke from the shadows. Most people talk to their God before they shoot. You talk to your breathing. Erin turned slightly. It was Dr. Chambers, observing quietly from the doorway. Same thing, Erin said. One listens, the other answers. Chambers stepped closer. You know, every operator here has their breaking point. Some hide it better than others. Yours is silence. Erin said nothing. Silence is what you crave, Chambers continued, but also what you fear, because in silence you have to hear your own thoughts. Erin met her eyes. You think I'm afraid of quiet? No, Chambers said softly. I think you're afraid of what it remembers. Erin didn't respond. She just reloaded and fired again, perfect shot. Then another. And another. Each round an answer she couldn't say aloud. By morning, the facility hummed with motion. Ghost Protocol's full machinery had come alive. Engineers calibrating sensors, analysts cross-checking satellite feeds, operatives preparing gear for insertion. Erin walked through it all in quiet observation. Everywhere she looked, She saw excellence, people who'd given up normal lives for shadows. And she wondered, as she passed the digital command wall displaying their motto, invisible, impossible, inescapable. Was that a mission statement or a prophecy? Reynolds found her later, standing before the main viewport. "You're quiet," he said. "Just thinking." "About what?" Erin's reflection in the glass looked distant, pale, almost ghostly. Every soldier trains for one moment, the shot, the mission, the success. But no one tells you what happens after, what you lose piece by piece. Reynolds didn't interrupt. "You stop being a person," she said softly. "You become a function, a solution to a problem only a few understand." He stepped beside her. "Maybe that's what this place is, the ones who understand." Erin shook her head, "or the ones who stopped needing to." Outside, the storm clouds began to form again, rolling over the mountains like a living thing. And deep below, the ghosts prepared for war. Why did every mission start with quiet? The days before deployment were the loudest for most soldiers. Metal clatter, shouted orders, the chaos of preparation. But inside Avalanche Station, it was the opposite. The deeper the operation got, the quieter everything became. Silence meant focus. Silence meant fear had already been acknowledged and filed away. Captain Erin Blake sat in her bunk polishing her rifle bolt for the 10th time that morning. It was already flawless. She wasn't cleaning metal, she was cleaning thought. Her movements were slow, deliberate, ritualistic, the only thing that kept her heartbeat steady. On the other side of the barracks, Marcus Webb adjusted his shoulder harness. "You always this calm before a mission?" Erin didn't look up. "Calm isn't the same as ready." He smirked. "You saying you're not?" "I'm saying calm is a decision. Readiness is a condition. They don't always meet." Webb watched her a moment longer, realizing she wasn't speaking philosophy. She was speaking survival. At 900 hours, the team assembled in the main briefing chamber. The projection dome above them flickered to life, displaying a holographic map of Eastern Europe's border mountains, jagged peaks and ice valleys glowing in digital blue. A red dot pulsed in the center, target Delta 19 Volkov's compound. General Winters stood at the head of the table, Reynolds at his right, Chambers to his left. "Mission window opens in 48 hours, Winters began. "Insertion point, 60 kilometers north of the objective. Extraction, none unless signaled. You'll be cut off from satellite feed for the first 12 hours due to magnetic interference." Kovich muttered, "That's a long 12 hours. Winters ignored it. "Blake will take Overwatch Position Alpha on Ridge 7. Webb and Chen will infiltrate through the eastern corridor disguised as maintenance personnel. Reyes will manage remote systems once inside. Kovach, demolition and fallback charges." He turned his gaze on Erin. "Your shot must coincide with data retrieval. Volkov's security protocol resets every 9 minutes. If he survives that reset window, the entire complex goes into lockdown." Erin nodded. 9 minutes, understood. Reynolds added quietly, "There's no second shot window. Weather reports indicate increasing storm fronts. This will get ugly fast." Erin's tone was calm. "The mountain always gets the last word." Winters looked at her for a long moment. "Then make sure you finish your sentence before it speaks." After the briefing, the team scattered to their stations. Erin lingered near the map wall, tracing the contours of the ridgeline with her gloved hand. Every angle, every wind funnel, every echo path. Dr. Chambers approached quietly. "You memorize terrain like most people memorize names." Erin smiled faintly. "Terrain doesn't lie." "People do." Erin didn't answer. Chambers folded her arms. "Do you ever think about what comes after, Captain, after the shot?" Erin's eyes stayed on the map. "After the shot there's recoil. After recoil there's silence. After silence, I try not to think about that part. Chambers nodded. That's where most operators break, not during the fight but in the silence that follows. Erin finally met her gaze. Maybe that's why I live there. The next 2 days blurred into mechanical focus. Kovac worked in the armory forging ammunition that looked more like art than engineering, perfectly balanced, cold as mercury. Rays monitored encrypted feeds, rerouting surveillance satellites to cover their blind zones. Webb and Chen rehearsed infiltration routes using augmented reality projections. And Erin spent every waking hour calibrating her rifle to conditions no computer could predict. At one point, Webb paused at her workstation. You ever miss normal life? Erin didn't look up. Define normal. Family, friends, home. She adjusted a dial. This is home. Out there's the noise between missions. He leaned against the railing. What about fear? Erin slid a cartridge into the chamber and looked through the scope. Fear's useful, she said. It keeps you honest. Panic gets you killed. Fear teaches you to listen. Webb whistled softly. You really believe that? She exhaled. I don't believe in much else. That night the mountain storm returned, wind howling through ventilation shafts, shaking the reinforced doors like they were thin sheets of tin. Most of the team slept. Erin didn't. She sat alone in the observation deck, lights dimmed, snow swirling beyond the glass. The storm reminded her of Frost Ridge, the shot that brought her here, the moment the world saw her as something more than human. But she remembered what came before that shot, the failures, the days of silence, the doubt that gnawed at her when nobody was watching. Reynolds found her there. No words at first, just stood beside her, watching the same storm. You ever wonder, he said quietly, what it's all for? Erin kept her eyes forward. Depends on the day. Today. Today it's for control. He nodded. Control of what? She turned to him. Of chaos, of fear, of the part of me that still shakes before the shot. Reynolds studied her face, the calm surface, the hidden fracture beneath. You hide it well. So do you, she replied. The following morning, final checks began. Kovac handed her the custom ammunition case. 3 rounds tuned to your specs. Don't drop them. Each one's worth a house. Erin smiled. I only need one. He grinned, spoken like a legend. Rays appeared, tablet in hand. Weather's deteriorating faster than forecasted. High-velocity crosswinds. We might lose drone support. Then we adapt, Erin said. Reynolds entered last, carrying a sealed envelope. Mission authorizations, he said. Winters signed off an hour ago. He looked at his team, his ghosts. This isn't a rescue or revenge or politics. This is containment. If Volkov releases that compound, we're looking at more than casualties. We're looking at collapse. The air grew heavy. No one asked how many had already died to keep this secret buried. Gear up, Reynolds said. We move at 300. In the armory, Erin adjusted her snow camouflage ghillie suit. Every strap tightened until the fabric became an extension of skin. She checked her rifle again, not because she doubted it, but because routine was the only thing that felt real. She caught her reflection in a steel cabinet. The woman staring back looked more ghost than soldier, eyes hollow from focus, jaw set, breath steady. For a fleeting second, she didn't recognize herself. Chambers appeared in the doorway. You're ready. Always, Erin said. Chambers hesitated. Do you ever wish you were? Erin looked down at her hands, scarred, steady. Sometimes, she whispered, but wishing doesn't change the weather. Chambers gave a faint, sad smile. Good luck, Captain. At 2:58 hours, the team assembled on the helipad. Snow whipped around them, visibility down to 10 meters. Engines roared against the wind. Reynolds moved down the line, checking gear, nodding once to each operator. When he reached Erin, he paused. 200 meters again, he said. Seems to be your number. Seems so. Make it count. She met his eyes. I always do. They boarded the twin-rotor transport, engines screaming, rotors slicing through the dark. As the landing pad dropped away beneath them, Avalanche Station disappeared into the white, swallowed by storm. Inside, the team sat in silence, helmets down, weapons secured, each alone with their thoughts. Erin's mind drifted to the single phrase she'd written in her notebook days before. The mountain doesn't care who wins. She wondered if that would still be true after tonight. The flight was long and violent. When the transport finally descended, they emerged into a world carved entirely of ice and wind. The ridge loomed above them like a frozen cathedral, its cliffs sheer and merciless. Far below, faint lights marked Volkov's compound, a handful of structures hidden in the blizzard's glow. "Move out," Reynolds ordered. They advanced in single file, slow, deliberate, breath sinking with wind. The crunch of snow under boots became the only sound. Each man and woman dissolved into the storm until they were nothing but shadows. Erin broke off from the main group halfway through the climb, scaling a narrow path toward Ridge 7, her firing position. Reynolds's voice came through her earpiece. "You're on your own from here. We'll signal once infiltration begins." "Copy," she whispered. Her ascent was brutal, ice cracking underfoot, wind tearing at her cloak. But she moved with purpose, as if each gust pushed her closer to something inevitable. When she finally reached the ridge, she lay prone against the frozen rock, set her rifle and looked through the scope. The world below came into focus, faint figures moving, guards patrolling, the glow of machinery beneath layers of snow and metal. Target zone confirmed. She checked her wind meter. Readings fluctuated wildly. Too unstable. She adjusted her calculations by instinct, a language only she could hear. Then she waited. Minutes turned to hours. Down below, Webb and Chen reached the facility perimeter, slipping through the maintenance corridor undetected. Reyes whispered updates through the comms, her voice steady but tight. Kovach planted demolition lines near the generator hub. Everything moved like choreography, every motion silent, rehearsed, inevitable. Then Reynolds's voice broke the quiet. "Blake, infiltration complete. We have eyes on Volkov. Stand by." Erin's finger rested lightly on the trigger guard. The storm had reached full force, visibility near zero. Through her scope, she saw nothing but ghosts of movement. Yet somewhere in that blur was the man who could end everything. "Confirm position," she whispered. Reynolds's reply came through static. "Target entering lab chamber. 8-minute window begins now." 8 minutes. No second chances. Erin adjusted her breath, slowed her heart, tuned out the world until there was nothing but pulse and wind. She whispered to herself, "The greater the challenge." And from somewhere deep inside the storm, her own voice answered, "The fewer the competitors." Her finger began to tighten. Why did it always come down to 8 minutes? Captain Erin Blake lay prone against the icy ridge, her cheek pressed to the frozen stock of her rifle. The storm screamed across the mountain, carrying with it shards of snow sharp enough to cut skin. She barely felt it. Her focus had narrowed to a single frame of the world, the faint outline of a window 2 miles below. Through the distortion, she could just make out a flicker of movement. Dr. Alexander Volkov, the man they'd come for, crossing the lab chamber, unaware that death was watching from the clouds. Her earpiece crackled softly. "Reynolds. Status check." "Position stable," she murmured. "Target confirmed. Wind is fluctuating 22 to 31 knots east to west, adjusting hold." "Copy. 7 minutes to reset window." She exhaled slowly, the breath visible for a heartbeat before the wind tore it away. Below her, the facility pulsed faintly with light. Guard rotations were shifting. The blizzard distorted every shape, every edge. She had to trust her instinct more than her eyes now. Webb Chen visual on Volkov's location, Reynolds asked through comms. Webb's voice came low and strained. Inside lab chamber, top floor, security minimal. We're patching into internal feeds now. Ray's data stream is live but unstable. I'll need at least 6 minutes to extract the formula. Erin adjusted the dials on her scope, micro-calibrations so fine they'd seem meaningless to anyone else. To her, they were everything. She heard her own heartbeat, slow, rhythmic, patient. The cold tried to bite through her gloves, but she ignored it. The mountain was testing her again, the same way it always did. It demanded stillness, and she answered. Reynolds again. 5 minutes, Blake, you're our failsafe. If Volkov tries to purge the data, you take the shot. Copy. Inside the facility, Webb and Chen moved like phantoms, their silhouettes melting into the flicker of fluorescent light. Chen's voice came through the static, visual on the compound storage unit, Volkov's initiating data encryption. Ray swore softly. He's locking the files manually. I can't override from here. Reynolds's tone hardened. Blake, stand by. Erin shifted her scope, adjusting for the faint shimmer of heat that marked the lab chamber. Through the storm's veil, she caught a glimpse, a figure in a white coat bending over a console. Target acquired, she whispered. Confirm ID. Positive, Volkov. 4 minutes. The wind picked up, howling across the ridge like a living thing. Her wind meter spiked. She recalculated instantly, reading the storm the way others read scripture. She adjusted half a degree, no more, no less. Her finger brushed the trigger, then stopped. Movement. Someone else in the chamber. She zoomed slightly. Another figure had entered, wearing full tactical armor. Not a guard, not one of theirs. Her pulse quickened. Reynolds, we have company. Define company. Unidentified operative, full combat gear, he's armed. Static flared through her headset. Hold fire, Webb, confirm visual. Webb's reply came through heavy breathing. Negative, I can't see him from our position. Gunfire erupted through the comms. Short bursts, controlled, professional. Then silence. Webb Chen, Reynolds barked. Nothing. Erin's voice was low, calm, but her hands had already steadied. I have eyes on the shooter. Through her scope, she saw the armored figure move with trained precision, weapon leveled, targeting someone just out of sight. Then Volkov turned, shouting something inaudible, terrified. The man in armor fired again. Volkov collapsed. Erin froze. The mission objective, killed before she ever touched the trigger. Target down, she said softly, but not by me. Reynolds swore, who the hell? She cut him off. Do I take the shot? Negative. Winter's voice now thundered through the channel. Do not engage until we have identification. But she was already tracking the shooter, her instinct overriding the command. The armored figure moved with military efficiency, not mercenary chaos. Whoever he was trained like her. He turned toward the window, scanning the ridge. As if he knew she was there. The sightline aligned. 2 professionals, 2 ghosts. And for a fraction of a second, time froze. Then the man raised his weapon toward her position. Erin fired first. The shot cracked through the storm, a thunderclap swallowed by wind. The recoil echoed through her body like memory. Through the scope she saw the figure jerk, stagger, fall. Impact confirmed. Target neutralized. But something in the aftermath felt wrong. Too easy, too clean. Reynolds's voice came through the static again, urgent. Blake, report. She breathed hard, trying to stabilize her focus. Hostile down, Volkov deceased, Secondary threat neutralized. Webb and Chen. Still silence. Then faintly Chen's voice strained, broken. We're hit, Webb down. Erin's blood went cold. Extraction compromised, Chen gasped. Facility locking down. Static swallowed the rest. Ray's voice cut in. I just lost all internal feeds, systems purging data. Erin's eyes widened. They're wiping everything. Reynolds' tone turned sharp. Blake, do you have a visual on Chen? Negative. Visibility's gone. I can't see the exits. Winters came over the channel again. Abort mission. Repeat, abort. Ghost team is compromised. But Reynolds didn't respond. He was silent for a long beat before saying quietly, we can't abort. The world doesn't get second chances. Erin's heart tightened. What are you saying? I'm saying you're the only one still in position, Reynolds said. If that data goes with the facility, it's over. We'll never know what Volkov built. Sir, the lab's collapsing. Then shoot through it. She hesitated. Reynolds. That's in order. Her finger returned to the trigger, her scope filled with fire and snow. Through the distortion, she saw the main reactor core glowing beneath the lab, the heart of the contagion. If she hit it cleanly, the data could survive. If she missed, the contagion would release. The world held its breath. She exhaled once, slow, deliberate, and took the shot. The explosion tore through the storm like a second sunrise. A flash so bright it turned the night white. Then came the sound, deep, rolling, endless. The mountain shook, snow avalanched down the cliffs like ocean waves. Erin hit the ground hard, shielding her head as debris rained across the ridge. Static screamed through her headset, then silence. No comms. No voices. No confirmation. Just the storm howling in mourning. She didn't know how long she lay there. Minutes, maybe hours. When the world finally stopped shaking, she forced herself up, body aching, head ringing. The valley below was gone, buried under tons of ice and ash. No sign of the facility, no signal from the team. Reynolds, she whispered into the mic. Nothing. Chen Webb raise. Only static. Her gloved hand tightened around the rifle. Somewhere deep inside, a voice whispered, you missed something. And she realized what it was. The second shooter hadn't been alone. There had been a third silhouette in the chamber, a shadow behind Volkov's console, moving right before the explosion. Someone had taken something. Hours later, as she descended the ridge, she found what was left of their landing site, the transport gone, footprints half buried in the snow. She activated her beacon, no response. Every frequency jammed. Then faintly a light. A figure approaching through the white. She raised her weapon, then froze. It was Reynolds. Helmet gone, uniform torn, blood on his face but still standing. Commander, she breathed. He gave a faint, grim smile. Thought I'd lost you. Everyone else. His silence was answer enough. Erin felt something inside her tight, that familiar mix of grief and discipline that soldiers wear like armor. What happened down there? She asked. Ambush, Reynolds said. We were compromised before we ever landed. Someone leaked the coordinates. Her stomach turned. Someone inside Ghost Protocol. He nodded, maybe higher. She swallowed hard, then why send us in? He met her eyes, because sometimes the mission isn't about success, it's about confirmation. She took a step closer. You think they used us? I think, he said softly, you just survived something you were never supposed to. They built a makeshift shelter as the storm raged on. Erin sat beside a small fire, watching the embers drift upward like tiny ghosts. Reynolds cleaned his sidearm in silence, the weight between them heavy and unspoken. After a long time, she asked, do you believe in justice, sir? He looked at her. Not in our line of work. Then what keeps you doing it? He smiled faintly. Habit, maybe guilt. She nodded slowly. Guilt's quieter than hope. Yeah, he said, but it stays longer. Outside, the wind howled again. Erin looked toward the horizon, toward the avalanche-covered valley where a secret had just died, or maybe been born. In her heart, she knew this wasn't over. The shot she'd taken tonight wasn't the end of something. It was the beginning. Why did survival feel like failure? 3 days after the avalanche, Captain Erin Blake sat inside a medevac transport, staring through a frost-covered window as the mountains faded beneath them. The world looked almost peaceful from above, a white expanse without scars. But she knew better. Beneath that snow lay a grave no one would ever mark. She hadn't slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the flash, the explosion swallowing the facility, the silence that followed, the radio going dead. And somewhere in that silence, she heard Chen's voice again. We're hit. Webb's down. It looped in her head like a heartbeat that refused to die. Across from her sat Commander Reynolds, his arm in a sling, eyes fixed on the floor. He hadn't spoken since they'd been picked up by the emergency drone team the night before. Neither had she. There were no words left that could clean what they'd done, or what they hadn't. The medic walked past them, checked vitals, and moved on without comment. The silence was worse than judgment. Reynolds finally broke it. Headquarters will want a debrief the second we land. Erin nodded. Let them. You know they'll blame us. Then let them do that too. He studied her a moment. You don't care. She met his eyes, calm, hollow. I care, just not about their story. They landed at Boreal Base, a classified staging point under Ghost Protocol's network. The facility looked nothing like Avalanche Station, smaller, colder, stripped of personality. It felt less like a headquarters and more like a quarantine. General Winters was waiting for them. He stood on the landing pad as the hatch opened, his coat flapping in the wind. 2 guards flanked him, their faces unreadable. Welcome back, he said flatly. Reynolds stepped forward. Sir, the operation was compromised. We suspect internal breach. Volkov was neutralized, but... I've read your preliminary, Winters interrupted. We'll discuss the details inside. Erin followed them through the steel corridors, the walls humming with the low thrum of generators. Her boots left wet prints on the floor. The entire facility smelled like disinfectant and burnt coffee. Inside the debrief room, a single light glared down from above. Winters took his seat across from them. Sit. Erin obeyed. Reynolds did not. Sir, he began, I'll take responsibility for the failed extraction. My decision kept Blake on Overwatch longer than protocol allows. Winters looked up sharply. You assume the failure was yours. Reynolds frowned. Isn't it? Winters slid a file across the table. The folder was stamped Classified Level 7/Ghost Protocol. He opened it slowly. Inside were photographs, aerial shots of the blast site, fragments of structures, scattered debris. Then came the next page. A body. Volkov. Or at least what was left of him. Erin leaned forward. He's dead. Winters' expression didn't change. That's the official version. Official, she repeated softly. He turned another page. A blurry satellite image taken 12 hours after the explosion. It showed figures moving through the wreckage. 3 of them. That's impossible, Reynolds said. We saw the facility collapse. Winters' voice lowered. Then tell me, Commander, who are these people, because they extracted something. He slid another image across. A heat signature. A small case being carried by one of the figures. Erin felt a chill crawl up her spine. Volkov's research. Winters nodded once. Gone. intercepted before our recovery teams arrived. By who? That's what you'll find out. For a long moment, no one spoke. Erin's voice finally broke the silence. Permission to speak freely, sir. Granted. You knew, she said quietly. You knew this was bigger than containment. You sent us in blind. Winters met her gaze without flinching. I sent you in because no one else could hit that shot. Reynolds's tone sharpened. Don't flatter her to cover your own orders. Winters leaned back. You think this is about ego. You think Ghost Protocol plays by your moral code. Erin stared at him. You used us as bait. He didn't deny it. Sometimes, he said, you have to draw the enemy out of the dark. You succeeded. Congratulations. Her voice turned cold. Everyone died for bait. Everyone dies for something, Winters said. At least your deaths meant movement. Reynolds slammed his hand on the table. You think this is a victory? I think, Winters said calmly, that survival isn't the same as innocence. Later they were confined to quarters for debrief preparation. Which meant we don't trust you. Erin sat on her cot, staring at the small tablet Winters had left behind, a sealed mission report draft. Her name appeared 4 times, each one attached to a different lie. Captain Blake confirmed target's death. Team members lost due to environmental collapse. Mission success, data recovery impossible, threat neutralized. She scrolled down slowly until she reached the last line. Operation Long Shadow, classified termination protocol executed under Captain Blake's authority. Her hand went still. They were pinning it on her. The report made it sound like she detonated the facility herself. Her throat tightened. They're rewriting it. Reynolds appeared in the doorway, his arm still in the sling. He held a sealed envelope in his good hand. They already did, he said. He handed it to her. Inside was an order, transfer directive, no signature. Destination, unknown. Classification, level 8 clearance required. She looked up. What is this? Reassignment, he said quietly. Winters wants you gone before the report leaks. She shook her head. No, that's not reassignment, that's burial. Reynolds sat across from her. You're right, it's a cover transfer. Once you're in, you won't exist. Not in the system, not on paper. She stared at the directive. And you? He gave a faint, humorless smile. Already dead, according to this report. That night she couldn't sleep again. The snow outside Boreal Base had stopped, but the silence was heavier than ever. Every corridor felt watched. Every reflection, a question she couldn't answer. She went to the observation deck, the same place she'd stood before the Frost Ridge tournament, before Ghost Protocol, before the lies. And for the first time in years, she felt the weight of her own name. Captain Erin Blake, the legend, the record breaker, the shot in the snow. What did any of it mean now? She'd hit the impossible shot, and it had been used to bury the truth. Reynolds found her there again, as if drawn by the same insomnia. They'll spin it, he said, make you the story they need. She didn't turn. Then I'll tell a better one. He studied her. You're thinking of going rogue. I'm thinking of finishing what they started. He exhaled. You do that and you'll never come back. She looked at him then, eyes sharp, steady. Maybe I already didn't. He nodded slowly. If you go, go quiet. Take nothing that pings their network. I don't need their tools. He gave a faint smile. You never did. At dawn she left. No escort, no clearance. Just a duffel bag, her rifle, and a name that no longer belonged to anyone. She walked past the sleeping corridors, past the control room, past Winters's office door. And just before she reached the hangar, she paused, her reflection caught in the reinforced glass. For a second, she saw the soldier she'd been. Then she looked away. Outside, the air was knife cold. A lone cargo transport sat idling on the runway, its engines low and steady. A pilot inside gave a small nod, no questions asked. Reynolds is doing, she knew. She climbed aboard. As the aircraft lifted off, Boreal Base shrank beneath her, swallowed by distance, then memory. She opened the envelope again, reading the last line Reynolds had written at the bottom before sealing it. If you find the truth, make sure it hears you. Erin stared at the words until they blurred, then folded the note carefully into her pocket. Hours later, at cruising altitude, the pilot's voice broke the quiet. We're passing over the eastern corridor now. You'll want to look at this. Erin leaned toward the window. Below, smoke. A convoy. Black trucks moving across the frozen plain. On the lead vehicle, the same insignia from the Ghost Protocol envelope, the letter G crossed by a sniper's reticle. Except now it was inverted. A mirror image. Her voice was barely a whisper, not Ghost Protocol. The pilot nodded grimly. Whoever they are, they're moving fast eastbound, toward the Black Sea. She exhaled slowly. Volkov's data, she said, they took it. The pilot looked at her through the reflection in the glass. What do you want to do? Erin's answer was quiet, final. Follow them. As the aircraft banked into the clouds, the horizon flared with the light of a distant storm, the same kind that had once crowned her as a legend. Now it marked her return to the dark. Below her, somewhere in the snow, the world had written her off as a ghost. But ghosts, she thought, don't rest. They remember. And this time, she wasn't aiming for a medal. She was aiming for the truth. Why did the truth always hide behind mirrors? The cargo transport drifted low over a sea of fog, its engines a dull hum against the winter silence. Erin Blake sat in the co-pilot's seat, eyes fixed on the terrain below, endless snowfields broken only by the faint line of tire tracks cutting east. For 2 hours she'd followed that convoy. No radio chatter, no ID signals, no insignia except for that inverted G burned into the side of the lead vehicle like a scar. The symbol looked familiar, but wrong, the reflection of the Ghost Protocol mark she'd once trusted. Now it felt like a warning. Any luck with satellite link? She asked. The pilot shook his head. Still jammed. Whoever they are, they're blanketing the entire region with counter-surveillance. Erin studied the readouts. The convoy was moving fast, too organized to be freelance mercenaries, too precise to be a scramble operation. This was something structured, funded, hidden in plain sight. She checked her weapon, 3 rounds left, Kovach's last batch, perfectly balanced. They outlived their maker. Keep visual contact, she said. If we lose them, we lose everything. The pilot glanced sideways. You sure about this, Captain? You're alone out here. Erin's gaze didn't waver. Then I'll be quiet about it. By nightfall, the convoy had stopped near a decommissioned radar facility. Soviet-era concrete buried under snowdrifts and time. Erin ordered the pilot to stay airborne, then rappelled into the storm below, vanishing into the white. The snow swallowed sound, muffling every step. Her breath formed small ghosts that vanished as quickly as they came. Through her thermal goggles, she counted movement. 6 guards, perimeter rotation, disciplined spacing. Not mercenaries, soldiers. But whose? She crawled closer through the drifts, her body a shadow among shadows. The wind tore at her cloak, but her heartbeat stayed slow, methodical. At the facility's entrance, 2 men stood smoking beneath a flickering floodlight. Their accents Eastern, but not Russian. Polish, Czech, no, something else. Corporate. She adjusted her earpiece, but static was all that came through. Total blackout, perfectly engineered. She moved when the wind rose, slipping between the waves of snow and shadow until she reached the outer wall. Then she stopped. On the metal door, the same inverted insignia. But beneath it, etched by hand, was a phrase in Cyrillic, "Where shadows learn to breathe." She felt her pulse quicken. That wasn't military doctrine. That was philosophy, the kind used by Black Ops units who believed they'd transcended morality. She'd seen that phrase once before, years ago, buried in a classified psych report on experimental conditioning for autonomous kill teams. Back when Ghost Protocol was still theoretical. Back when it had another name, Specter Division. Inside, the hallways were stripped bare, cables hanging from walls, footprints leading deeper into the structure. The smell of oil and gunmetal lingered. Erin moved silently, rifle at low ready. Every few meters she saw fragments of old equipment, broken monitors, rusted shell casings, outdated medkits. But some of it was new, clean, used. She reached a stairwell, descended 2 levels and froze. Voices. She pressed herself against the wall, listening. 2 men talking in English now, low, precise. "Winters wants it processed by dawn," one said. "The package already left the ridge. We'll hand it off at Sector Delta." And the American. "She doesn't exist anymore." Erin's breath slowed. Winters. Her blood went cold. He wasn't investigating the breach. He was the breach. A sound behind her. She turned fast, rifle raised. But the silhouette that met her wasn't an enemy. It was Dr. Elise Chambers. "Lower the weapon," Chambers whispered. "You'll bring the whole facility down on us." Erin didn't move. "You're supposed to be dead." "I could say the same," Chambers said quietly. Her face was pale, eyes hollow but alive. "They thought they buried me in that avalanche too." Erin hesitated. "How are you here?" "I followed the same trail you did. The inverted insignia, it's Spectre. They were a branch under Ghost Protocol, experimental, behavioral reprogramming for operatives who stopped asking questions." Erin frowned. "You're saying Ghost built its own mirror image?" Chambers nodded. "A fail-safe. When missions went off the rails, Spectre teams were deployed to erase evidence and sometimes witnesses." Erin realized what that meant. "They sent Spectre to us." "Yes," Chambers said, "to clean their mistake." They moved deeper through the corridor together. Every few steps, the facility groaned, old metal remembering ghosts of its own. Chambers led her into a narrow lab chamber lit by a single blue lamp. On the table lay shards of scorched metal and what looked like a melted hard drive. Next to it, a data core intact. "Volkov's research," Erin breathed. "Part of it," Chambers said, "recovered from the wreckage before the Spectre team arrived. I've been decoding it for 2 days." Erin leaned closer. "What's inside?" "Not a virus," Chambers said, "something worse." She brought up the decrypted feed, pages of biocode sequences interlaced with neural pattern maps. "Human." "This isn't about genetics," Chambers whispered. "It's about control, cognitive imprinting through bioengineered protein chains. It rewrites how a soldier perceives loyalty." Erin stared at the screen. "You're saying it can change who they obey?" Chambers nodded. "And Winters has it." Erin felt the floor tilt under her feet. If that technology reached deployment, entire armies could be turned into programmable ghosts. Obedience without question, conscience without friction. "Why tell me this?" she asked. "Because you were the prototype," Chambers said softly. Erin froze. "What?" "You weren't chosen for Ghost Protocol by chance," Chambers continued. "They studied you after the SEAL exercise, your calm, your detachment, your ability to isolate emotion. They wanted to know if it could be replicated. You became their template." Erin's voice dropped to a whisper. "That's why Winters watched me at Frost Ridge." Chambers nodded. He wanted to see if the perfect shot could be made by someone who didn't need approval to pull the trigger. Erin took a step back, her breath catching. "You're telling me I was part of their experiment?" No, Chambers said softly. You are their result. The air between them seemed to freeze. For the first time in years, Erin felt something break through the layers of calm she'd built around herself, anger. Pure, quiet, cold. So what now? She asked. You expect me to disappear again? Chambers shook her head. I expect you to finish it. Finish what? Winters, Specter, all of it. They built a weapon out of conscience. It's time they see what happens when it fires back. Erin stared at her. You want me to assassinate a general? I want you to make a decision, Chambers said. The same one they thought you were incapable of making. Footsteps echoed down the corridor. Voices, flashlights cutting through the dark. Specter Patrol. Chambers killed the lights. We have to move. They slipped through a side passage, racing through the skeletal remains of the facility. The alarms began to wail, dull, mechanical, ancient but still deadly. At the far end of the corridor, a door loomed, rusted and half-frozen. Erin kicked it open. Outside, the storm again, wind screaming, snow swallowing everything. They ran. Behind them, figures spilled from the door, shouting. Gunfire split the night. Erin turned mid-stride, raised her rifle and fired once. One shot clean, a Specter soldier dropped. Another tried to flank left. She fired again, perfect correction. Then again. 3 bullets. 3 bodies. 3 echoes lost to the wind. Kovich's rounds had found their end. When the shooting stopped, the snow settled. Erin stood still, rifle lowering slowly. The wind pushed against her face, as if trying to erase what had just happened. Chambers watched her half in awe, half in fear. You didn't hesitate, she whispered. Erin looked toward the bodies. They didn't either. For a long time, neither spoke. Then Chambers said, What now? Erin turned toward the east, where the storm met the horizon. They're heading to the Black Sea. Winters will be there, so will whatever's left of Specter. Chambers frowned. You can't take them on alone. Erin's voice was steady, almost gentle. I don't plan to take them on. I plan to end them quietly. She slung her rifle over her shoulder, pulled her hood up, and started walking into the wind. Chambers called after her, Blake, if you go through with this. Erin didn't stop. Her voice came back through the storm, low, calm, final. I stopped being theirs the moment I pulled the trigger. Hours later, as dawn bled weakly across the horizon, the snow began to calm. Chambers stood at the entrance of the old facility, watching the small figure vanish into the white. And she thought, not as a scientist but as a witness, the perfect shot was never about distance. It was about conviction. Far beyond, where the clouds met the sea, a single helicopter moved across the skyline, Winters's transport, heading east. The final target. And somewhere below that flight path, Erin Blake was already waiting. Why do the cleanest shots leave the deepest wounds? The wind was soft this time. Not like Frost Ridge where the mountain screamed, not like Avalanche Station where the world burned. Here above the Black Sea, the air was calm. Too calm. Captain Erin Blake lay on her stomach atop an abandoned watchtower, her rifle assembled piece by piece beside her. Below, hidden between the cliffs, was a fortified hangar complex, sleek, modern, and invisible to satellite until an hour ago. Her eyes followed the faint glow of runway lights cutting through the fog. A single transport helicopter rested there, surrounded by armed men in gray Specter armor. And stepping out of it, General Winters. He looked smaller than she remembered. Older. But the arrogance was the same, the way he carried silence like a weapon. Erin adjusted her scope, every motion measured, steady, familiar. The crosshairs found him effortlessly. The man who built her career, the man who erased it. The man who thought he owned her. Through her earpiece came a whisper, Dr. Chambers. Blake, do you have visual? Confirmed. Specter command structure is active inside. Data transmission in progress. You can end this if you. Erin's voice was quiet. There's always an if. She refocused on the sight picture. Winters moved slowly across the platform, speaking to someone, a woman in a dark coat, posture military but not uniformed. Behind them, technicians loaded containers into a second aircraft. On each crate, the Spectre insignia, inverted, sharp, final. Looks like he's relocating the project, Chambers said. Volkov's data, the protein code, everything. Erin's hand brushed against the side of her rifle. The weapon felt alive in her grip, heavy, waiting. Her thumb flicked the safety. The metal clicked softly, a sound only she heard. Below, Winters paused near the helicopter door. He turned, looking directly toward the ridge. Not by accident, not coincidence. As if he knew. Through the scope, Erin met his eyes across the distance. He couldn't possibly see her, but something in his stillness made her believe he did. Chambers whispered, "He's stalling, probably waiting for Spectre extraction. You need to take the shot before." Erin didn't move. Her finger hovered above the trigger. "Not yet," she murmured. Her breathing slowed. She watched Winters hand a small case to the woman beside him. It wasn't military gear. It was polished, sealed. A data core. "Target passing off the prototype," Chambers said urgently. "That's the neural key for Volkov's research. If they leave, it's gone for good." Erin didn't respond. Something inside her was shifting. Not calculation this time, not duty. Memory. The frost ridge snow. The laughter before the storm. The first time she realized she didn't fit into any definition of soldier they'd made for her. All of it led here, not to the shot itself, but to the moment before it. The question, why pull the trigger at all? "Blake," Chambers' voice cracked through the static, "talk to me." Erin exhaled softly. "Do you know what the first rule of precision is, Elise?" "What?" "It's not hitting the target." She adjusted the scope slightly, watching Winters through the reticle. "It's knowing whether the target deserves to be hit." Winters began to speak, his voice faint through her directional mic. "The world needs order," he said. "Not conscience, not hesitation. Spectre gives us that, perfect obedience. No guilt, no rebellion, no noise." The woman beside him asked, "And the prototype?" "Functional," Winters replied. "Blake was the proof of concept. The program works." Erin's pulse slowed, her world tunneled. She was the proof. Her focus, her calm, her silence engineered. Not through drugs or implants, through conditioning. They'd sculpted her like a weapon, and she'd believed it was will. Chambers' voice was low now. "Erin, if you don't stop him, it spreads. Global military distribution. Every soldier with a programmable mind." Erin's eyes didn't leave the scope. "And if I do?" "Then you burn the system that made you." Erin's finger rested lightly on the trigger. She could feel the storm inside her, not around her. The years of obedience. The medals that meant nothing. The silence she'd mistaken for peace. Winters turned again, glancing toward the horizon, as if sensing the end coming. "Every soldier breaks," he said to his aide. "The trick is building one who never knows it." She pulled the trigger. The shot cracked through the still air, slicing across the distance in less than a heartbeat. The recoil pressed against her shoulder, warm, familiar, final. Through the scope, she saw Winters jerk, clean impact, high chest. He staggered, fell to his knees, the case slipping from his grasp. The woman screamed, ducked behind the helicopter, shouting orders. Spectre guards scattered. Another helicopter flared its engines. Erin chambered the next round. But she didn't fire. The damage was done. She exhaled slowly. The world grew quiet again. the kind of quiet that comes only after justice has no words left. "Target down," Chambers said softly, confirming from her remote feed. Transmission interrupted. Data feed collapsed. Erin didn't answer. "Blake, are you there?" Erin lowered her rifle. The weight in her hands felt heavier than ever. "It's over," she said quietly. "Then come home," Chambers said. "We'll debrief." Erin interrupted, her tone distant. "There's no home left for ghosts." Hours later, the sun rose over the Black Sea, pale and cold. Erin sat by the shoreline, her rifle dismantled beside her, the pieces lined up in perfect order. She hadn't moved since the shot. The waves whispered against the rocks, small, endless sounds that didn't care who lived or died above them. Her hands trembled for the first time in years. Chambers found her there, wrapped in a heavy coat, eyes red from exhaustion. She sat beside her without speaking. For a long time, they just listened to the sea. Finally, Chambers said, "You know you didn't have to kill him." Erin nodded slowly. "Yes, I did." "He would have stood trial." Erin looked at her. "For what? For building a world that doesn't believe in guilt." Chambers said nothing. Erin turned her gaze back to the horizon. "I used to think silence meant control, that calm meant strength." She exhaled, voice trembling slightly. "But silence isn't peace. It's just what comes after too much noise." Chambers' voice softened. "What will you do now?" Erin smiled faintly. "What soldiers always do after the war, try to remember who they were before it." She stood, lifting the disassembled rifle pieces one by one, then tossing them into the sea. The metal vanished beneath the waves with a sound like punctuation, quiet, absolute. Each piece fell away until only the scope remained. She held it in her hand, the glass catching the dawn light. Through it she saw the world smaller, sharper, distant. Then she lowered it, and for the first time saw without it. "Sometimes," she whispered, "you have to miss the target to hit the truth." She let the scope fall. A week later, reports circulated quietly through the intelligence channels. General Winters deceased, apparent transport accident. Specter Division disbanded, assets liquidated. Project Volkov destroyed in fire. Officially, Captain Erin Blake was still missing, presumed dead. Unofficially, she had become a rumor. A name whispered among operatives, soldiers, and intelligence analysts who'd seen too much. They called her the ghost sniper. The woman who could hit the impossible and then vanish. The one who made the final shot not for war, but for dignity. Months passed. In a small coastal town far from any map, a woman worked quietly in a boat repair shop. She spoke little, kept mostly to herself. Locals knew her only as Erin. She walked the docks at sunrise, staring at the horizon as if waiting for something to appear or someone. Once a boy asked her if she was a soldier. She smiled softly, "Not anymore." "What were you?" he asked. She looked toward the waves, someone who learned how to listen. "To what?" She thought for a long moment, then said, "To the kind of silence that forgives you." That night when the town slept, she sat alone on the pier. The sea was calm. The stars hung low, reflections trembling in the water. And somewhere far behind her, across continents, the wind moved through the mountains, Frost Ridge, Avalanche Station, all the places that had built her and broken her. She closed her eyes. In the stillness, she remembered every shot she'd ever taken. The recoil, the echo, the silence that followed. And then she remembered something else, her father's voice, years before she joined the army. "Precision isn't about control, Erin. It's about responsibility." She smiled faintly. The wind brushed her face, cold but kind. Responsibility. That was all it ever was. As dawn broke again, she whispered a final thought into the wind, one that would never be recorded, never declassified. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak, it simply acts. The sun rose behind her, washing the sea in gold. And the legend of the sniper who hit the impossible shot, the woman who walked away from silence itself, was finally at peace.